Welcome to the Heal with Kelly podcast. I'm Kelly Noonan-Gorse, and every week I speak to the leading doctors, healers, spiritual teachers, and scientists to find out what is truly possible when it comes to healing. I also interview real people with extraordinary healing stories. My philosophy is, what's possible for one is possible for all. Thank you for joining me on this beautiful journey of remembering our divine nature and tapping into the truths that shall set us free. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Heal with Kelly podcast. Today, I am very excited to share with you about a therapy I just learned about. I am here with Brad Pitzele, who is the founder of 1000 Roads, which we'll get into. But here's a little bit about Brad before we dive in. So after a lifetime of strange medical conditions, Brad was diagnosed with autoimmune arthritis in 2010. Brad began traditional treatments until he was diagnosed with malignant melanoma in 2014. Realizing that the treatments had a higher risk of cancer, Brad was determined to find a better way. On his healing journey, he also discovered he had Lyme disease and a co-infection called Bartonella. Brad's health continued to decline to the point where he could barely walk. He had severe brain fog and chronic fatigue issues. In 2016, his doctor recommended he either try hyperbaric oxygen therapy, HBOT, or exercise with oxygen therapy, EWOT or EWOT. After researching, Brad decided to try EWOT, but because he could not afford what was on the marketplace at the time, he decided to build his own. A year later, showing great improvements in health, his doctor asked him if he would start making EWOT systems for his patients. And 1000 Roads was born, with the mission of bringing down the price of EWOT so that more people could benefit from it. So I just learned about EWOT, and I'm so excited to share this with my audience because it seems so powerful. And you are here to show us and explain just how powerful it is. So welcome, Brad.
Thank you so much. It's been an interesting road getting here, as you've alluded to. When I learned about EWOT back in 2016, I had never heard of it. And because I'd never heard of it, when my doctor recommended I try it, the first thing I did is I looked at hyperbaric because I'm like, I've heard of hyperbaric oxygen. And then I looked and did some research on EWOT as well. The challenge with hyperbaric oxygen is that for me, at least in my condition, it was recommended I spend 90 minutes inside of a hyperbaric tube, not the soft shell you can do at home, but the hard shell in a doctor's office. Which is much more potent than the soft shell you can do at home, and every day. And so the thought of spending 8 weeks, 90 minutes plus time to pressurize and depressurize that tube, it just wasn't feasible. So when I looked at EWOT, it was 15 minutes of cardio while you're breathing oxygen. And that's essentially what EWOT is you simply are breathing near pure oxygen while you're doing a cardiovascular workout for 15 minutes. And a lot of folks are already doing cardio, so oftentimes for a half hour or more. So for 15 minutes, like that was an easy thing I could fit in, and I knew I could keep my job and everything else and not have to really change my lifestyle to do it. Now, the thing about EWOT is almost nobody knew about it, and it's grown much more popular in recent years. But as you've alluded to, Kelly, it's still not widely known. So EWOT is a very close cousin of hyperbaric oxygen. The easiest way to think about it is an analogy with hyperbaric. In hyperbaric oxygen, we're laying in a tube and they're pressurizing that tube and also adding near pure oxygen. And so that pressure forces more oxygen through our lung membrane and into our blood, where it's able to circulate into our body. In EWOT, what we're doing, instead of having the oxygen pushed with pressure, we're using cardiovascular exercise to pull it through. And what happens when we all exercise is our body immediately recognizes that we're about to go into an oxygen starvation mode. It says, hey, I don't have enough oxygen to produce the energy to continue this cardiovascular exercise. So we have all these compensatory changes that naturally happen. You start breathing more deeply and more quickly. The membrane of your lung actually thins out to allow more oxygen to pass through. Your blood beats faster and deeper. And then, of course, you have what's called vasodilation, which is your blood vessels get larger to carry more blood. And so all of these changes of our body, these physiological changes that allow more oxygen to get through, we effectively hijack them by breathing pure oxygen at the same time. We're able to have folks take in the same amount of oxygen as they would in 90 minutes in a hyperbaric chamber in just 15 minutes. So it's a large amount of oxygen. And the great thing about it is there's almost no risk with doing this. So we're just breathing oxygen. And because we're exercising at the same time, there's almost no risk associated. Where in hyperbaric, there are some risks of rapid depressurization, issues with eyes and ears. Obviously, there's some folks who have anxiety and claustrophobia being in that tube, and we have some of those folks come to us all the time. But the benefits are really quite amazing. So
Yeah, talk to us about your personal story a little bit and like your journey, and then we can kind of get into the data and the research of what it's actually doing. But what was your experience?
So I always say we have two types of customers who have experience with EWOT. So, well, first I'll back up and say my doctor suggested it. I looked around in the marketplace, and it was a combination of companies charging $10,000 to $25,000 for one of these units. And I just didn't have a lot of faith in the marketing. There was a lot of marketing out there that was full of hyperbole, and I couldn't see myself spending, $10,000 on something I didn't feel really good about. It felt like another one of these health experiments, and I had run many health experiments. I had changed my diet. I often joke that I eliminated anything that brought any source of joy to me. I got rid of alcohol, caffeine, sugar, grains. Like I was just eating just certain vegetables, not even all vegetables, and meat. And I tried so many other things without having a whole lot of success. But when I started doing this, as I said, there's kind of two types of our customers that I see. Some folks, they do their first EWOT session and they're hooked. They have more energy. It's cleared their brain fog. Just so many benefits. They love it. And then there's another group that's kind of a delayed responder group. And that was me. I did it for the first 3 months. I didn't notice any benefit, but I was still exercising and I still did it. And then in about the third month, all of a sudden I started noticing, I looked back at my symptom diary and I was like, well, wow, actually, there's a bunch of symptoms that have gone away. But as I always joke, when you have 57 symptoms, when 22 of them go away, you're still thinking about the other 30-some that are still hounding you. And so I was like, wow, I'm seeing benefit. And I started to get better and better. For me, some of the first early signs for me is I started to get more energy. If you go to the About Us page on our website, I actually have a picture of me on my 40th birthday and on my 41st. And on the 40th, you can just see I had dark circles and I was just trying to make it through the day. And by the next birthday, you could see the spark of life had kind of come back in me. I had less brain fog and access to my brain again. And a lot of the aches and pains started to go away. But the crazy thing about it for me was I continued to see incremental benefits into the third year, which I always think is shocking because let's just say you were to start an exercise regimen today and you decided you were going to run 2 miles 3 times a week. By the time you got to 6 weeks or 6 months, let's say, you'd expect that it would just kind of be easy. You wouldn't be getting a whole lot of benefit. You kind of would have plateaued. So I was surprised to see that into my third year. And yeah, today I don't have any energy issues. I don't have any brain fog issues to speak of. I've gotten rid of my arthritis. I don't have it really at all. I would say about 2 days a year when it's raining out, I might feel a tiny little twinge and I'll be like, oh no, and then it'll be gone in like a half hour sort of thing. What I say with folks with Lyme disease, I won't tell you this cures Lyme disease. I don't think you really ever fully get rid of Lyme disease, but I would say I'm 98, 99% better. It doesn't affect my life anymore. I'm just careful about making sure I don't beat down my immune system and overdo things anymore, which is the wisdom of age, I suppose, as well. but I really don't have any of those issues. And for about 5 years, Lyme was controlling my life. How much time I could spend on the floor with my kids, how much time I needed to nap on the weekends, how I had to kind of hide in at my place of work and hope they didn't really notice that I was only 60% there, sort of thing. So it was huge. And in that first year, when I'd already had a lot of improvements, and I went to that doctor and he said, "Wow, you're so much better. What did you do? Did you using the oxygen like I said?" I'm like, "Yes." And he said, "Hey, who'd you buy it from?" And I'm like, I just made my own." And he looked at me like I had a horn growing out of my head, and he said, "Wow, that's crazy. Would you consider making it for my patients?" And at the moment, I was like, "Well, let me think about it, doc." And I was on my healing journey, but I was still trying to keep my job. I had a family. I wasn't all the way there yet. And so in about a year later, I just thought about it. And really, the difficult thing about having chronic illness, and particularly something where there's not an answer in mainstream medical, is that everyone has a $15,000 experiment you can do. And there's only so many of these things you can do. And it just felt like everywhere I turned, everyone was telling me, "Give us 15, give us $60,000, And and you don't know if these things are going to work. And I've talked to so many people who've spent six figures or more just trying to get better, really mortgaging their life, to be quite honest. And so this was kind of a company we started out of gratitude and saying, how do we give back to this community and help some of us who just feel like, on top of the sickness, we have people coming for, for maximum profit on us. And so that was really the goal, is kind of to start out of gratitude and to bring some science to it. We wanted to get out of the hyperbole. We didn't want to, talk in hyperbole and gleaning generalizations. We wanted folks to understand this is a legit science. And so we've done several things. On our website, we have a variety of research. We've also tried to put reviews on our website. We're the very first EWOT provider to do that. And the reason we did that is because it's still a relatively, expensive thing. We sell one system for $1,700 and another one for $2,300, and people haven't tried it. And so, that's always scary, jumping off that ledge and spending even that kind of money without having to know, is this thing legit? Are people really seeing benefit, or is this just some sort of fad? And so we've done the best we can to bring transparency to it. So that was kind of our journey from sickness to starting this business.
And you didn't even mention the cancer. So the cancer completely resolved with oxygen. And did you do anything else? Like, is this a good supplement, or is this like what you would say was the, because I know about Otto Warburg and how his research demonstrates, and maybe you could speak to this a little bit more, that cancer just can't survive in an oxygen-rich environment. So it seems like EWOT would provide that inner environment where cancer just cannot thrive.
Yes, you're right. So my personal experience is I actually had 3 brushes with cancer. When I was in my mid-20s, I developed polyps, which is very young to develop colon polyps. My father had colon polyps, and my grandmother had full-blown colon cancer and was very close to death. So that was pretty scary for me. And then about 2012, I developed something called Barrett's esophagus, which is a precancerous condition in the throat. And and then I developed melanoma, and it was metastatic. It was so that was pretty scary. And it just felt like I was just waiting for a cancer. It was just like one of these cancers was just going to get me. I kept having brushes with it, and the premonitions didn't feel so good. And I had a young family. And so the melanoma was actually a wake-up call for me. I was using traditional therapies for my arthritis when that developed. And I got to tell you, the arthritis was absolutely crippling. As you mentioned in the bio, I couldn't walk. If I had to get up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, I had to put a special set of shoes on. That was the only way I could walk. My feet hurt so bad. They felt like they were beaten by like a meat hammer is the best way to describe it. And Beyond the arthritis, the backs of my legs were tight. It felt like I'd run an ultra marathon. I was in a really bad mess, and I knew I was going downhill. And then I got this cancer, and I remember going to my rheumatologist and saying, well, doc, what do I do? Like, if I keep taking these arthritis medications, I'm likely to develop cancer. And if I don't take them, I'm going to die of this autoimmune condition. And he kind of just said, well, we'll just try a different brand name. And I was like very shocked by that. I was like, yikes. I'm like, I feel like I'm looking down the barrel of a gun and you're telling me to keep walking. And so that's what got me off the beaten path to start looking at alternate health treatments. But EWOT is very anti-cancer. Because as you mentioned, oxygen is very anti-cancer. As you alluded to, in the 1920s, Otto Warburg discovered that he could turn any regular cell into a cancer cell simply by starving it of oxygen. And there's been a ton of research on this throughout the years that have shown the link between oxygen and cancer. It cannot survive in a cancer-rich environment. So what cancer actually does is it turns off our oxygen metabolism using regular respiration, aerobic respiration with oxygen, and it switches those cells to anaerobic respiration, which is burning glucose without any oxygen. And what happens when we burn, when we go anaerobic, is it creates all sorts of metabolic waste products like lactic acid. So you often hear about how cancer acidifies the body. This is one of those primary acids that causes this. And then the body, as intelligent as it is, it tries to overcome this lack of oxygen by growing new blood vessels into the tumor. But cancer, smarter still, it hijacks that and it uses those new blood vessels to actually metastasize and send cancer cells to other parts of our body. Wow. And so it's a fight. And if you look at the research, actually the survival rate of people with tumors is directly proportional to the oxygen status in the tumors. And the reason for that is whether you're using traditional treatments or non-traditional treatments, even traditional treatments require oxygen to oxidize the cancer. Oxidization is basically a chemical reaction that helps destroy the cancer, but chemotherapy and radiation will not work in the absence of oxygen. So we have people who have cancer who are doing traditional therapies, and one of the greatest benefits they see on top of the anti-cancer benefits is also that it's very detoxifying. So as I mentioned, there's this oxidization reaction. Our body uses oxidization to break down complex molecules into simpler molecules that our livers and our kidneys and our elimination organs can get out of the body. So when we bring more oxygen into the body, we can break down that lactic acid, we can break down metabolic waste products and other toxins in our body and get it out. And that includes chemotherapy or some of the damaged tissue from radiation therapy. And so a lot of folks who are doing traditional cancer therapies will use it to detoxify so that they don't have all the side effects that you can get from those treatments.
Yeah, it boosts the effectiveness of those treatments by, pushing oxygen and for, speeding up the oxidization. And then it also helps to detoxify the side effects and the, byproducts of those treatments. So it sounds like a win-win. So you could use EWOT alongside traditional therapies should you be doing that. It's like a 1-2 punch. I love it. I mean, I'm just like loving oxygen as a natural, for me, everything, all the answers point back to nature, right? And I think technology, we should be at the place of consciousness and intelligence where we can take the best that modern technology and science have to offer, but then create treatments that are not harmful. So like we can up level our game and go, let's take what nature has, keep everything intact. So we're not, Frankensteining it and taking, out the balance so that there are these negative side effects. And it sounds like with EWOT, it's like we're just enhancing what nature already provides by, putting pure oxygen rather than the 21% or so that we're breathing, right? So I don't know. I love it. And so that's just with cancer. I'm thinking about getting one just for longevity, detox, prevention. I mean, to me, it's something I'm doing anyways, cardio, and you just throw on a mask. Well, let's explain the process of what you do. So if I'm on my Peloton, I get one of your units, and it's just as simple as like, tell us how it works.
So when you exercise, you can use easily 50 or 60 liters of oxygen in a minute, which is a massive amount of oxygen. We have a machine that we have two different size machines. One produces 5 liters of oxygen a minute. The other produces 10 liters of oxygen per minute. What they do is they take that, as you alluded to, that 21% oxygen that's in the air, and they purify it to 93% oxygen, which is the same grade of oxygen you would get in a medical grade oxygen system. And then we store that in a large reservoir that holds 1,000 liters of oxygen. And the reason we need that large reservoir is because the machine's producing 5 or 10 liters and you need 50 or 60 liters. So we have this buffer, if you will. And then from that reservoir, we attach a mask with a hose, and it's got a special valve on it. So every time you breathe in, you're breathing in that 93% pure oxygen and through one valve. And every time you breathe out, you're breathing out your exhale into the room, not back into that reservoir. So the next breath is 93%. And so to your point, it's a relatively simple procedure. Literally, you strap a mask on and you do 15 minutes of cardio. And we generally recommend folks do it. Ideally, we say if you can do it 3 to 5 times a week, you'll get optimal benefits. Of course, we always also say that perfection is the enemy of progress. So if you can only start by doing 5 minutes, or you can only do it once a week, you're still going to get a lot of benefits. And to your point, so one of the great benefits of EWOT that was something it was totally unexpected for me was the benefits to my cardiovascular endurance and my strength training. So I always tell this story. When I started doing EWOT, I was using a commercial grade elliptical machine that I'd owned for years. It had 20 levels of resistance, and I would do it at like a level 12, which was very stiff for most folks, but I'd done it for so long, it was kind of like I'd read a magazine and do it. And then I started doing EWOT, and immediately that was like too light, and I had to go up to 13 and 14. And then in another month, I had to go up to 15. Today, I use that machine at a 17 out of 20 resistance, which I know they designed it with 20 levels of resistance, but I'm sure the engineers never thought someone would actually be using it up there.
Maybe like a CrossFit, champion or something.
Right. And I'm not working any harder than I was when I was doing 12. You feel the same. And on the occasion when I forget to set up my EWOT machine and I do it without the oxygen, I can still do 17. So my cardiovascular endurance has improved. When I weight lift a couple days a week, I will do like an EWOT session afterwards to blast out all the lactic acid. And I never get sore, even if I miss a week or two. And that surprised me because when I was like 25, if I missed a week or two, I was going to be sore. So it's kind of impressive. And those are just what I consider, unless you're a competitive athlete, and we do have some competitive athletes who use us. That's almost just like an add-on bonus. The primary bonus is, as you were discussing, is anti-aging. So the way EWOT was discovered was there's this gentleman, Van Arden, back in the 1960s and 70s who did some research. And what happens is every one of us every year past age 25, we lose 1% of the ability to use oxygen each year. Oh. And so at age 27 and 32, you don't really notice it. It's a small amount, but you get to 65 and 70, and that's why you don't have as much energy and stamina as you used to. And the reason for that is, as you were alluding to natural solutions, in Western society, inflammation is so prevalent that we now call it inflammaging. We just think we're naturally supposed to become more and more inflamed as we get older. And this inflammation is all over our bodies, including inside of our blood vessels. And our capillaries, which are thinner than a human hair, they have this swelling that happens inside them, and they actually swell shut. And so now what happens to all of us as we age, what happens is all the cells downstream from that capillary are now cut off from oxygen. And so they go from aerobic respiration to anaerobic respiration. And unfortunately, anaerobic respiration is a lower energy state. So because they have less energy, they have to stop doing all of the essential functions. And one of the first functions they stop doing is they stop taking the trash out. So they're doing this anaerobic respiration, which produces all this lactic acid and metabolic waste product, and it just builds up inside the cell wall. And the cells just leave it there because they don't have energy to deal with it. They're trying to do what they need to do to keep going. And when we do EWOT, now what I'll tell you is if we were to look at any one of our red blood cells right now, they're saturated with oxygen. And that's primarily where we're getting our oxygen. So there's not any room for more oxygen. So why does EWOT help? EWOT helps just like hyperbaric because it actually drives oxygen into our blood plasma. Blood plasma is this clear yellowish liquid that the red blood cells ride on. And it's much, much thinner than a red blood cell. Typically, it only carries like 2% of the oxygen in your body, but we saturate it during EWOT. So now your blood plasma is saturated with oxygen. And because it's thinner, it's able to get past those choke points in your blood vessels and get oxygen to those cells. So immediately, those cells are now switching from anaerobic back to aerobic respiration using oxygen. They start cleaning out all this metabolic waste and all the waste products in them. And that's the immediate benefit. But the benefit's even better because oxygen is a very powerful anti-inflammatory. And so what Van Arden discovered is when the oxygen passes through that choke point, it causes an anti-inflammatory reaction that reopens that capillary and reestablishes normal blood flow. And he discovered that even after people did it just a few times, they could come back weeks and months later and they still had normal blood flow. So it was a durable improvement. And that's this anti-aging at a very cellular level that's happening when you do EWOT. And so it's very anti-inflammatory. And as I said, I really care about people knowing the research. And one of my favorite pieces of research is that deals with oxygen and inflammation. And what they've shown time and again is anywhere in your body that you have inflammation, you have low oxygen. The term they use for that is hypoxia. That's the medical fancy term for low oxygen. So anywhere you have inflammation, you have hypoxia. And the reverse is true. Anywhere you have hypoxia, you have low oxygen. So you cannot have inflammation in an oxygen-rich environment either. And so when we're flooding the body with oxygen, we're reopening all of those capillaries and feeding all of these cells all of the oxygen they need. We've shut off the oxygen spigot. And that goes back to my story where I said I didn't feel results for 3 months. So for folks who don't feel it right away, the reason is it's what I call a bathtub analogy. It's like if you imagine inflammation is like filling a bathtub with water, and people like me who were very, very sick, you pull the drain and you don't notice the water going down for several minutes. You keep looking in the bathtub, still a bunch of water in there. And then you go away and you come back in 10 minutes and then you can see a difference. And that's, so for folks that are very sick, some of those folks don't notice results right away. They may take weeks and like me, even months. But most folks by 3 months start noticing big differences. Other folks notice it right away. So that's the anti-inflammatory effect we talked about. We talked about the anti-cancer.
What's your favorite? Like, do you have any like remarkable healing stories from clients? Like a couple of your favorites, like stage 4 cancer, boom,
Absolutely. I had a gentleman with stage 4 cancer up in Michigan, and he bought a system from us, and he comes back to me and he tells me his story. And it was just, he was a young father, a father of young children rather. And he was given stage 4 and he was given 6 months to live. And, he decided he wasn't going to do chemo and radiation, and he did EWOT and changed his diet. And he came back to me and said, Brad, I wasn't even able to walk without a cane when I started this. And now I just got done walking 6 miles and I'm on the other side of this thing. And it's like the stories that matter are the ones where you just hear how it affects people personally. You know what I mean? Like this is a person, this is a dad, and he had young children, and to know like I know that feeling because I was there worried about like what's going to happen to my family if I can't work or if I die. And so that one really touched me. We have folks using it for Parkinson's and Alzheimer's.
Yeah,
I
what are those improvements looking like?
yeah, um, Alzheimer's, obviously, there's a variety of things going on there. There's a very famous doctor, Dale Bredesen, who's got a protocol to reverse cognitive decline, and they've
He was on the
started to,
podcast. We love
yes,
Dale. Yeah.
he's amazing. And they've started to recommend EWOT to folks for their RECODE program, which is reversing cognitive decline. And we've had folks talking to us and just saying, I've even had folks come back to me and say, my husband did it and he's done it 6 times now, and I already notice a difference. The days he's doing it, he's more cogent. He's getting his personality back. And I have people using it for actually one of my favorite stories is I had a gentleman who was using it for CTE.
Yeah.
Um, and so he was
Football player, hockey player?
he was actually he was actually jumped by a couple gangs,
Oh,
and he was in a couple car accidents.
oh my God.
And when he was young, and now he was an adult and he was doing tax returns. I know it seems like a big difference. And he was doing tax returns, and he would talk about, he's like, the brain fog is so bad. I can't do my job. I don't even know what I'm doing. And I just get angry and I can't control my emotions. And the first day he did it, he said, he came back to us and said, the first day I did it, I had, my brain was clear. And the rest of that afternoon, I felt great. He's like, I was back to my old self. He's like, the next day was more of the same. He's like, so he would do it every other day. And he's like, on the days I did it, I was great. And after about 2 or 3 weeks, he was like, now I'm feeling good for both days. And so he was crawling out of that. And, he's like, I no longer have these rage issues that you often hear about people having with CTE or concussions. And so it's just amazing for so many things. At the base of it, your body needs oxygen to produce energy. Energy isn't just about us feeling awake and alert. Energy is about each cell doing everything it needs to do its best. So when your liver has the oxygen it needs, it can detoxify well. When your brain has it, it can help you think more clearly and recall memories better. And so it's helping so many people, so many things. It's amazing.
I wonder, are there studies done on how oxygen rich, EWOT and hyperbaric and everything helps actually? Because, the brain, CTE is actual injury to the brain. And obviously, with Alzheimer's and cognitive decline and all of that stuff, like, are there studies that show actual physical healing happening in the brain with oxygen?
Yeah, I haven't seen anywhere they've done brain imaging, but when they talk to people about their like disability scores or their cognitive performance pre and post with that, yes, there are definitely studies that show people healing and improving their performance. And I always say, it's like when you're really sick with a chronic health condition, um, it would be nice to be perfectly healed and back to where you are. But like when you're at the bottom of that well, so to speak, you're just thrilled if you can get 5 steps closer to the top, sort of thing. Like progress means so much because it means hope and it keeps your spirit alive and it keeps you going. And that's actually some of the best stuff is when I have customers come back to us early on in their healing journey and they're like, oh my gosh, there is actually I can see light at the end of this tunnel, sort of thing. And that's
I
always
think
exciting.
I always say like relief, whether it's from pain, whether it's from, emotional or physical pain, like relief is, or a symptom, relief from a symptom is like the best feeling in the world. If you can just
Right?
get relief, and then of course improvement but it's like, yeah, I can see that. Do you have any insight? Because you were pretty sick. You had lots of layers of different stuff going on. Do you have any insight of where that all began? Obviously, there was some genetic stuff happening with the polyps. Is like, do you look back at your childhood environment? Like, why was your inner environment so rich for all of these,
It
imbalances?
was I think everyone who has sickness has a variety of different things going on. With what I'd say is with Lyme disease, obviously there's a bacterial infection component to it. What people don't know about Lyme disease is when we hear about Lyme disease, we hear about ticks. Everyone talks about ticks. And then they tell you that the ticks can only live in certain states, like they adhere to state lines or something, which is always interesting.
I know, it's so wild to me.
But what they don't tell you is there's so many other ways you can get it. You can actually get Lyme disease from a mosquito or a spider bite. Um, and I had not only to have Lyme, I had one of its best friends, Bartonella. So these two infections like to go together and like they tag team you to beat you up and knock down your immune system. Bartonella is the infectious agent that causes cat scratch disease or cat scratch fever. And Bartonella is in 25% of the mammal population, and it's in all like homeless people, it's very high, near 100%. Feral animals, it's nearly 100%. And well, when I was in kindergarten, we took in a feral cat. And shortly after that, I started to get symptoms, strange symptoms that would come and go my whole life. But my immune system kept those things kind of small and transient for the most part. To your comment, there was also another component, which was lifestyle and probably some spiritual components to it as well. I moved out to California in 2009, and we bought a short sale house. And I was renovating that house for 2 or 3 years, doing it like so. I'd go to my day job, and then I would do physical labor all evening, and trying to get this house put together for my family. And it really took a toll. I enjoyed it. I loved every minute of it until all of a sudden the arthritis started creeping in, and then the energy level. And I think I just beat myself up. And so over time, that was kind of what lit the wick. And once it got going, it becomes this like, it takes on this life of itself, and it just becomes deeper and deeper. And you kind of see the light closing in on you, and it's pretty scary. When you see that, I just remember feeling like the life force was like draining out of me, and like I didn't even have the energy to fight that. I was just like, geez, you start pondering what's going to be of your life and your family and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, I mean, I just love when stories of triumph and, just when you had that moment of intuition where the guy offered you a different brand name, but no real solution. And then you started to you opened your aperture to consider other things. Oxygen therapies were recommended. And then you just, couldn't find anything out there that you trusted, didn't have the means to do another $50,000 experiment.
yeah.
So you're just like, well, I'm going to create my own and try it and look. And then you created a company that allows access to this tremendously beneficial therapy that's natural and not harmful, and is incredible not only for healing anything chronic, but also preventing, and just keeping us in optimal health. Like, I am so fired up. I'm going to get a system. How big is the bladder or the reservoir? Can it fit in a normal size home or?
Yes, it's about 6 feet wide and about 5.5 feet tall. So it does take some size. Some folks put it in their garage or their basement. Some folks put it in an extra bedroom or a workout room. Usually you can fit alongside a treadmill or a bike. Yeah, so that's one.
And then the actual oxygen is not like an oxygen tank that's like at risk of exploding. It converts oxygen from the
on demand.
Yeah.
On demand. So you turn the switch on and it starts firing up. So one of the things we've done a little bit different than some of the other companies is I always joke, we're already asking Americans to exercise. And because it takes time to fill that reservoir, now we're asking them to pre-plan their exercise. And so we should just go bankrupt before we even started this venture. So one of the things we've done differently is our oxygen concentrator, the device that produces the oxygen. It's capable of being used with a digital outlet timer like you'd use with the Christmas lights or a smart outlet. We didn't integrate it into the device because there's people of varying technical capabilities, and we wanted to give them some simplicity. but effectively it takes, for our larger system, it takes an hour and a half to fill that reservoir. And for our more economical system, it takes about 3 hours. And so what we do is we have it so that you can use this timer and automate it. So if you want to use it at 7 a.m. every morning, you just set it to turn on an hour and a half or 3 hours before, and you wake up and it's ready for you. So it's ready to go.
And how long is that oxygen? Because you said we only need like 60 something liters, but there's 1,000 in there. So like, can that one fill last you for 5 days, or how does that know?
Believe it or not, that is basically designed for one 15-minute session. So the purpose of that, the size, is it just enough so that the vast majority of people can get 15 minutes. Now, some people will only use half of that. If you're an 80-year-old woman, you might only use half of it. And some folks, if you're an NBA player, you may suck the whole thing down. But to put in perspective how much oxygen that is, that's like the same amount of oxygen that you and I take in about 13 or 14 hours. So in that 15-minute session, it's just a massive amount, and it does so much good for you.
And can people overdo it? Like, you're like 15, there's like crazy ultra athletes out that they'll probably be psycho and be like, oh, they say 15, I'm going to do 1 hour a day. Can you overdo it?
Not really. So there's actually alternate cancer centers out in Arizona that I'm aware of that are recommending some of their patients do it 3 times a day. I think that's overkill. If you do one 15-minute session 3 to 5 times a week, you're going to get great results. Now, if there's oxygen left in the reservoir after you get to 15 minutes and you want to do it the whole 20 minutes or whatever it takes to empty it, no problem, no harm, no foul. The only real major risk is there's exercise involved. So you do want to, take a break and let your body rest and recover. That's why I usually recommend 5 times a week, not 7 times a week. So it's just an overtraining, overuse sort of thing is the only major risk.
Yeah, it's that balance of like when you're healing, you want to allow your body the energy for the immune system to take care of the problem and the imbalance. So you do need to work rest into the equation, right?
That's right.
Has there been, not to, I'm not trying to negative advertise here, but has there, there's some conditions and some specific types of cancers that are kind of known as the doozies, right? Mm-hmm. Let's call it pancreatic, let's call it ALS. Pancreatic cancer and ALS are probably the ones I hear most common. Brain, obviously, cancer is they're tough nuts to crack. Have you ever met someone who's tried EWOT for 3 months and there's been no improvement, or is it, something, is there more nuanced approaches for some more difficult diagnoses?
I do know some folks. I don't know all of those conditions. I know someone I know a couple. The husband is dealing with pancreatic cancer, and the wife then found out she had colon cancer. A pretty well-known couple here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And so he got a system for himself, and then he got a second one for home when he found out about his wife. And they gave him, 3 months to live. And when they came back to us to get the wife her second system, he was over a year in and just getting better, so to speak. So we are definitely seeing some improvements there. I tend to tell folks 3 to 5 times a week is great. Now, if you feel like you're in good enough condition and you want to add a 6th day or a 7th day, no problem. There's some folks that just, they just want to feel like they're doing everything. They want to do it twice a day. You can do it twice a day. It's not going to harm you, other than if you give yourself a bunch of energy right before it's time for bed, that, that might not be the best thing for you over time. But there's no harm in doing it. But we see such great results. Like I said, rather than focus on doing it more time, I always recommend folks focus on getting their intensity up when they're doing it to a point, like 70 or 80% of your theoretical max heart rate is a good place to be. We don't want you to try to go full out sprinting for 15 minutes. You're just going to wear your body and your immune system down and do no good. But work on more getting the intensity up to where you get to that 70 or 80% of your theoretical max. And people are seeing great results.
I feel like every sports team must have an EWOT in their training facility. Is that
More of them should know about it. I'll tell you that. Some of them
really?
do. Some of them do, and some of them don't. Well, you know, you hear a lot. You see a lot of these athletes using like soft shell hyperbaric chambers, um, and to some degree that makes sense because they're doing a lot of working out, and when they're now they can get oxygen while they're resting, so to speak. If they can get themselves to do it, the problem is they want to be in there an hour to 2 hours, and like the times of the premium. But we do have a lot of athletes using it. Like, and there's a few different ways you use it. One is I always tell folks if you're going to exercise long, and this is for anyone, if you're going to exercise longer, if you're just one of those people say, I don't want to just do 15 minutes, I want my full 30-minute cardio workout, that's fine. I would say do your first 15 minutes and then save the EWOT for last because number one, you've already got your blood flowing more. And so now we're going to be quote, injecting this oxygen when you have the pump prime, so to speak. And number two is it helps with recovery so much and getting rid of that lactic acid and helping your muscles recover better. And a lot of times we'll tell folks like these athletes use it, after you're done with your workouts and your practice, go do 15 minutes on this. It's almost like a cool down for them. But again, it's just bringing that oxygen in and helping them recover. So,
I mean, it sounds like I just trained for a marathon and I trained like so half-ass. I did what I could, but I just wanted to get
there's
back
nothing
out there.
half-ass about a marathon.
That's true. But now I'm thinking like, if I do it again, it's like go out for your long road run and then come back and finish 15 minutes with oxygen on the treadmill. And you'll have like, not only will it boost, I just feel like recovery, like you won't be so sore. You could run longer. You could train harder.
Yes.
I'm excited to try
You're going
this.
to see so many benefits. I always tell folks if you're an athlete and you're looking to hit your PR, this is amazing for that. There's so many athletes who don't know about it, but actually the most research done on EWOT was done with Olympic teams and in the realm of athletics, both in Russia and here in the United States. We have if you go to our research page at the bottom, we list some of the benefits to your VO2 max, endurance, muscle strength, etc. So it's a really, really powerful modality for that.
Amazing. Any other like benefits that we haven't covered? Anything else before we sign off? And because I just like, I don't know, I'm fired up.
The only other one I would say is I think we mentioned a little bit more energy. Most folks notice more energy and a clearer head. And then the flip side of that is also true. Most folks will come back to us and tell us they're getting better, higher quality sleep. And as you know, sleep is so important to recovering from anything, whether it be an athletic endeavor or from an illness. And so I know when I was really sick with Lyme disease, I had so much insomnia. It was like, oh my gosh, I can't even sleep. I'm so tired all day. And then I'm up all night sort of thing. So it really helps with that as well. So yeah, it's amazing. It does so many things. My joke always about EWOT isn't that it's hard to explain the benefits. It's actually hard to tell folks that there's so many benefits because it's almost unbelievable. And when you get down to it, the great thing, like you said, Kelly, is it's natural. It's oxygen. So the downside of it is limited. So that's the amazing thing.
Yeah. And I love it's a technology that you've stumbled upon that, gives us this like concentrated dose of something we're already doing anyway. But what we're already doing anyway naturally isn't enough anymore in the modern natural world. So there's inflammation coming at us from the toxins in our food, the toxins in our air, the toxins in our water, the extreme emotional stress of, keeping up with the Joneses and just state of the world, 24-hour news cycle, social media, all of these things. It's like we have to up our natural defenses and these things that our bodies use, and just we've got to balance the other side of that. So we're getting bombarded on one side with all the negative. We've got to kind of enhance the positive. EWOT seems like the kind of no-brainer, and I just want to reiterate to the audience too, like you said that 1,000 roads and these accessible EWOT systems that you created were out of gratitude and giving back and seeing how it changed your life and health in a matter of a year, 3 months and then beyond. And now you're making them accessible at a price point that like you barely make anything just to keep the lights on, because you want more and more people to have access to this incredible healing technology.
That's right. Yeah, it's awesome. We're super excited. And I'll tell you, my favorite part about this job is when we get customers reaching back out to us and telling us how it changed their lives, because it is so powerful.
1,000 roads. What does that mean? Where did you come up with that?
It was a story about everyone's healing journey. The thing I discovered when I was healing is everyone's journey is unique. So in Lyme disease, you can't really go to a doctor. It's kind of like a figure it out yourself sort of thing. And so you go talk to the community of folks who have Lyme disease, and someone's like, this thing was great for me, and you try it and it does nothing for you. Someone says that doesn't work, and then you try it and it helps you. And it was just a recognition that everyone has to travel their own road, both emotionally, spiritually, and how they treat themselves, and honoring that, because I think there's so much that we learn in getting ourselves back to health, and it makes us more appreciative and have more gratitude. So
I agree. Beautiful. Well, I love it. Well, thanks, Brad. Where can people find more information about you and get one of these systems?
Yeah, go to 1000roads.com, all spelled out, ONETHOUSANDROADS. And you can learn more about our company. You can read the About page. It talks a bit about my story. You can look at the research page and see some of the research. We have blogs and more content, and you can read customer reviews and see how other customers are responding and how much and what they think of our company. So trying to be transparent and give people the information they need so they can make the decisions. Awesome.
Well, so great to have you on, and thanks for the work you're doing. And I'm gonna order me a system. I'm excited. I'm ready to get some oxygen in this.
Thank you, Kelly. This has been awesome. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Heal with Kelly podcast. Be sure to tune in every Thursday for more empowering wisdom and inspiring healing stories. And make sure you hit the follow button on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss that one episode that holds the answer you've been searching for. Oh, and if you found this episode inspiring, please rate, review, and share Heal with Kelly so that we can grow our audience and reach more people. We truly appreciate it. Lots of love.